Todd McLean.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. It gives me pleasure to stand and speak on the Unit Titles Bill. And indeed, it is a bill that the committee spent some time dealing with last year, and we received extremely interesting submissions from a wide range of submitters who covered a wide range of views. What I wanted to do, Mr. Speaker, I want to touch on a couple of points that I think are important that came through that submission process, but I think it's important we dispel a couple of myths. And it comes from a speaker opposite earlier in the debate. Of course, this bill was first proposed by the last government. And it's a very important issue. In fact, we know that these unit title developments can be extremely complex and very difficult for people to manage once they're owners, or to have good information before they purchase such an apartment. However, what members opposite have said to us, of course, Mr. Speaker, is that this was their bill. Well, I guarantee you, Mr. Speaker, when this enters into law later during this parliamentary debate, that it won't be their bill anymore, because they had their opportunity. They didn't take enough time to get this through in the last Parliament, and therefore this now becomes our bill. And it's been improved significantly, the draft that had been put on the table. Now, a couple of issues I want to touch on very briefly, Mr. Speaker. And one of these is around the supply of information, or disclosure and provision of information to people when they buy into a unit title development. And we heard from submitters who were concerned that when they had bought off plan before a development had been produced, that not all of the information that they believed they would need to understand what it was legally they were entering into had been provided to them. We heard submissions about problems that people had had once they'd purchased. One man came to committee and said that had he realised before he had purchased that all of the costs for that development, in as far as electricity, had been loaded onto his unit, he probably wouldn't have purchased. So committee took a position on this and put in place measures whereby full disclosure is necessary to a prospective purchaser before the active sale goes through. And in the case of this information isn't provided to them, they have the ability under the law to cancel that agreement, that sale. And I think this is important. Mr. Speaker, a couple of other areas. Maintenance was an issue we spoke of at great length and considered in the committee, and there was a view that a mandatory regime for maintenance of the communal areas of a property was necessary. But a number of submitters came to us and suggested that they themselves had different arrangements within their property, and that it was working for them. So a view was taken, and a recommendation comes from the committee to amend the bill as it stood when it first came to us, that allows body corporates to opt out of establishing long-term maintenance funds, but they must retain a requirement for a mandatory long-term maintenance plan. And largely we heard, Mr. Speaker, that many of these body corporates actually do have a longer-term view. Once the owners are involved, a longer-term view of how they must maintain the communal areas of their property over the longer term. Timeshare was something that came up, and it was an issue, Mr. Speaker, that the bill as originally drafted would have included timeshare developments, but when it came to making decisions it would have been extremely difficult given the wide range and number of owners in a timeshare resort. And I want to make a particular reference of the Member of Parliament for Taupo, Louise Upston, who had a number of constituents involved in timeshares, timeshare owners that said that this law may not work for them, and therefore Louise made a very strong case to a number of members of the committee, and a very good solution was found for those members. Mr. Speaker, it's important this enters into force quickly, and I support the bill fully and commend it to the House. Thank you.